The wind swept across the plain, carrying the scent of pine resin and hot earth warmed by yesterday's sun. The horizon was bathed in early morning light, a mix of deep purples, pinks, and gold, and shadows stretched long over the uneven ground. On a small rise, almost hidden by wild grasses and sparse trees, stood a cabin, solitary, humble, and weathered by time and storm. Nature had been reclaiming this land for years, yet the structure endured, a testament to human stubbornness. Inside, a man named Gideon Pratt sat at a rough-hewn wooden table, attempting to coax life from an old, dented samovar. His hands were calloused and strong from years of hard labor on the land, but there was a tension in them that no work could explain. He wasn't afraid. Fear had long ago been replaced by a quiet, practiced vigilance. Years of solitude had made him attuned to the world, to the subtlest shifts in the air, the almost imperceptible sounds of movement outside. A sudden snap of twigs echoed from behind the cabin. Gideon froze. His hand instinctively moved to the knife hidden at his belt. Silence followed, thick and tense, like the world was holding its breath. Then a rhythmic thud, hooves striking the dirt with measured force, came from the clearing beyond the trees. Gideon stepped outside. The morning sun painted the landscape in gold, and the wind carried the faint metallic tang of distant iron. He squinted toward the horizon. 5 riders emerged, moving with purpose, confidence, and a dangerous edge. Their faces were set in expressions of disgust and determination, young but hardened, the kind of men who believe themselves unstoppable. The lead rider was barely 25, with a face that might have been handsome once if not for the scowl etched deeply across it. His eyes locked onto something in the distance with a focus that made Gideon's chest tighten, not with fear, but with recognition of the weight of conviction. "Step aside, white man," the lead rider called out in heavily accented English, his voice low, firm, filled with authority. "This is not your concern. She's on my land." Gideon's voice remained steady despite the turmoil he felt inside. "That makes it my concern." The young man's jaw tightened. Words in a foreign language, sharp and fast, flew from his mouth, incomprehensible to anyone not familiar with it. Behind Gideon, a translator named Nish murmured quietly, conveying the meaning with a soft, careful cadence. "He says, I poisoned his brother, made him sick with my presence. Did you?" Gideon's eyes did not leave the riders. "I've never spoken to his brother, never been near him." His voice was calm, but exhaustion lingered there, the kind that comes from being accused too many times of things he didn't do. Nish's translation continued. The lead warrior's gaze shifted, his anger growing, fueled by old grief and superstition. His brother had fallen ill the previous winter. Someone had to bear the blame. Gideon's chest hardened. He had seen this before. Men who justified cruelty and injustice simply because they decided their victims were less than human. The kind of men who, without hesitation, would destroy anyone who stood in their way. "I'm standing against 5 men who rode onto my property to threaten a woman," Gideon said, his voice low but unwavering. "Now get off my land before I make you." It was an empty threat. Everyone knew it. 5 armed warriors against 1 unarmed rancher. The odds were impossible. The lead warrior smirked, recognizing the bluff. Slowly, deliberately, he dismounted, his movements precise, meant to convey control. The other 4 spread out in a loose semicircle. "You made a mistake, white man," the leader said, drawing a long knife from his belt. "Taza may have fooled you with his stories, but she is not worth dying for." Gideon's mind raced. Fast, but not fast enough to outrun them. Strong, but not strong enough to fight them all. His cabin was too far to reach, and even if he made it, the rifle inside was locked in a cabinet that would take precious seconds to open. He was out of options. Out of time. Then, Nailish moved. She rose, slowly, deliberately, not aggressive. Not threatening, just fully herself. All 7 feet of her towering presence. The raw strength in her muscles and bones. The aura of someone who had survived countless threats and emerged unbroken. The effect was instantaneous. The warriors halted. 2 of them stepped back. Nailish spoke in her own language, her voice carrying across the creek with unyielding authority. Gideon did not understand the words, but he understood the message. She was taking control. She was no longer his responsibility alone. The lead warrior's face paled, then flushed with anger. He shouted, but his voice cracked. Fear seeped through. "Fear of her. What did you say?" Gideon asked quietly. I told them if they want to kill me, they should try, Naelish replied. I won't go quietly. I won't burn or flee. Whoever comes for me should make peace with their families first, because they won't be going home. It was a bluff, perhaps, but watching the fear in the warrior's eyes, Gideon realized it might not be. Naelish carried truth in her stance, in the calm but lethal confidence that she would fight if cornered. The standoff stretched, seconds dragging into eternity, until the sound of hooves shattered the tension. Taza appeared from the north, riding hard, a dozen warriors behind him. He positioned himself between his daughter and the young man, his face a mask of fury controlled by experience and authority. The confrontation that followed was in their language, sharp, tense, unavoidable. Gideon did not need translation. He knew Taza was asserting leadership, and the young warriors were forced to yield. But their eyes, full of hatred and fear, promised this was far from over. As the riders retreated into the trees, Taza turned to Gideon. You have until sunset to decide. After that, I cannot protect her, not even for my own people. He rode off, leaving Gideon alone with Naelish, and with the understanding that the choice he was about to make was no longer just about marriage, honor, or tradition. It was about survival. Silence settled over the creek, heavy, tense. Naelish sat on a rock, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped her knees, hiding what she could, but not entirely. You weren't bluffing, Gideon said softly. I wasn't, she replied, eyes on her scarred hands. 3 years ago, a man came to test whether I was cursed. I didn't mean to kill him, but when someone my size fights back, even in defense, the results are permanent. Gideon nodded slowly. Everything clicked into place. The fear, the retreat, the stories whispered among her people. It was all real. They feared her. They hated that she existed. Then what happens next? He asked. There's a trading post 3 days north, run by a French trapper. He doesn't care for local politics. If I survive there, I keep moving until someone tolerates me, or until I can't move anymore. Gideon's chest tightened. She had been living with death as a constant companion, yet she still calculated every risk, every step. Come back to the house, he said. Her eyes widened. Why? Because if we're going to talk, we do it properly. And because you haven't eaten since yesterday. Naelish hesitated. He wasn't asking permission, just offering an option. She rose, and together they walked through the tall grass toward the cabin. Halfway there, a scream shattered the fragile calm. A woman, kneeling by an overturned wagon, cried out for help, her child trapped beneath it. Gideon bolted, Naelish keeping pace beside him. Together, they lifted the wagon, saving the child. The mother looked at Naelish with awe and fear. The giant, the cursed one, she whispered, clutching her son. Gideon realized the consequences immediately. The world would hear of Naelish's strength, her existence, and react in fear and prejudice. We need to leave, she said. Where would you go? He asked. Not me, she replied. You've done more than enough. The choice was clear. They couldn't stay. The world would never accept her. The sun's halfway to setting, Gideon said. Your father gave me until sunset. I'm deciding now. I'm not asking you to save me again, she said. I'm not, he replied. I'm making it because if I let you walk away, you'll be dead in 3 days. And I'll have to live knowing I could have stopped it. Her expression flickered, hope and fear mingling. You understand what you're agreeing to? This isn't temporary. Marriage is binding forever among my people. Some might reject you. Neighbors will whisper. You'll lose everything here, she said. Then we build somewhere else, he said simply. Her jaw tightened. We? Yes, he said. That defeats the whole purpose otherwise. Taza arrived again, confirming the rushed ceremonial binding was sufficient. Hands joined, symbolic cord wrapped, promises exchanged. They were now married, bound together against a hostile world. Not long after, a mob of settlers arrived, led by a farmer with a rifle. They shouted, threatened, pointed, but Marshal Keene, older, experienced, authoritative, intervened. Step down. Nothing illegal has occurred. Move along. Gideon stood firm. That is my wife. Show respect or leave. The settlers dispersed, muttering threats, but powerless against law and determination. Alone, Taza addressed his daughter. I chose this man because he is brave even when it destroys him. He will protect you. The old man rode off, leaving Gideon and Naelish standing together at the cabin. Outcasts, married, but unexpectedly free. Over the following days, they prepared to leave. They packed light, abandoned the land, and set west toward unclaimed territory. 3 days later, they found a valley with water, shelter, and isolation. They built a small cabin together. Naylor's strength made construction easier. Gideon's wisdom guided the process. Time passed. They did not speak of love, yet built partnership, respect, and survival. Gideon realized that perhaps impossible was exactly what they needed. If you love this story of courage, survival, and impossible choices, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more unforgettable frontier tales. The valley was quiet, almost eerily so. Trees stood like silent sentinels along the ridges, their branches rustling softly in the gentle morning breeze. Gideon and Nailish had arrived 3 days prior, each carrying nothing but what they could manage: a few tools, some dried meat, blankets, and the unspoken weight of their pasts. The small cabin they built was crude but sturdy, a testament to determination and necessity rather than artistry. Nailish surveyed the structure, hands on her hips, a thoughtful frown on her face. "It will do for now," she said, brushing dirt from her trousers. "But it won't hold against winter storms. The roof must be reinforced." Gideon nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. "I know. We'll gather stronger beams from the North Ridge tomorrow. For now, we eat, rest, and plan." Inside the cabin, the fire crackled in the small stone hearth. Smoke coiled up the chimney and diffused into the cool morning air. Gideon reached for a small pot of beans he had prepared, stirring slowly, letting the aroma fill the room. Nailish sat cross-legged, sharpening a knife with methodical precision, her focus unwavering. "You're calm," Gideon observed. "After everything, you seem calm." Nailish didn't look up. "Calm doesn't mean safe. Calm means ready. If I panic, we die." He smiled faintly. "Then you've been preparing for this your whole life, haven't you?" She finally looked at him, eyes sharp, deep brown pools reflecting both pain and strength. "Every moment, every day, I survived the unjust, the greedy, the cruel, and I've outlived them all. Until now, I thought survival was enough. But with you, it feels like more than survival. Strange, isn't it?" Gideon's hand hesitated over the pot, then rested lightly on hers. "I feel the same. Strange, but necessary. If we survive, it will be together." A sudden noise outside made them both freeze. The sound of snapping branches, faint but deliberate, echoed across the valley. Nailish was on her feet in an instant, eyes scanning the tree line. Gideon reached for his rifle, loaded now with rounds he had salvaged from their previous escape. From the shadows of the pines, two figures emerged. Young men, armed with rudimentary weapons, and wide-eyed fear written across their faces. One of them stepped forward, raising his hands in surrender. "Please, wouldn't mean to," the taller one stammered in English, accent thick and unfamiliar. We were told to check if you," the woman, the cursed one, "we meant no harm." Nailish narrowed her eyes. "Cursed? Who told you that?" The boy swallowed hard. "Taza's enemies, the settlers. They spread stories to scare everyone. We just wanted to see if it was true. We didn't want to fight." Gideon lowered his rifle slightly. "Then leave, and tell no one you've been here." The boys nodded fervently and turned, fleeing into the forest. Nailish exhaled slowly, her body relaxing slightly. "Fear travels faster than truth," she murmured, "and lies even faster." The day passed with routine, reinforcing the cabin walls, gathering water from a nearby stream, and preparing food for the evening. As the sun dipped behind the ridges, painting the sky in shades of crimson and violet, Nailish sat outside, gazing at the horizon. Gideon joined her, handing her a tin cup filled with warm tea. "Do you ever wonder," he began, "why fate keeps testing you? Or why it brought you to me?" She took a sip, letting the warmth settle in her chest. "I don't believe in fate. I believe in survival. Fate, that's a luxury. You can't survive on fate alone. And yet here you are," he said softly, "alive, and somehow still human. Even after all that pain." Her lips curved faintly. "Human enough. But sometimes I wonder if humanity is more dangerous than the enemies we fight." Night fell, thick and silent. The valley was cloaked in darkness, broken only by the occasional glint of starlight reflecting off the stream. Inside the cabin, the fire burned low, casting flickering shadows across the walls. The quiet was broken by whispered voices. "Gideon, do you trust me?" "Nailish, trust is earned. And so far, you've done well." "Gideon, I won't fail you." "Nailish, no one gets to fail me." Not anymore. Sleep was restless. Both were haunted by memories. The screams of the attacked, the bitter cold of the desert nights, the feeling of being hunted for something they hadn't done. Yet in that valley, with the distant mountains guarding them, there was a fragile sense of hope. Morning brought new challenges. The valley was not entirely isolated. Game was scarce, and the soil only reluctantly gave up its fruits. Gideon suggested scouting the northern ridge for better shelter, while Nailish insisted on creating traps to secure their food supply. Their tasks split the day, yet every glance, every silent nod, reinforced the bond forming between them. While setting traps near a small creek, Nailish noticed unusual footprints, larger than any humans, yet not entirely animal. She crouched, examining the soil. "Something's watching us," she muttered. Gideon frowned, crouching beside her. "From a forest? Closer. Maybe yesterday." They returned to the cabin cautiously, keeping to the shadows. Inside, they reinforced doors and windows. That night, the disturbance came, a low growl, almost imperceptible outside. Nailish placed herself by the door, knife in hand, muscles coiled like springs. Then, from the darkness, emerged a large wolf, eyes gleaming, ribs visible beneath its matted fur. It circled the cabin once, sniffed the air, and retreated silently into the night. "It's testing us," Nailish whispered. "Yes," Gideon said, "and we'll survive the test." Together, days turned into weeks. They began to understand the valley, the patterns of the wind, the seasonal movement of animals, the best places to hunt and gather. They became a seamless unit, their skills complementing each other. Gideon's wisdom, patience, and planning meshed with Nailish's strength, instincts, and unwavering determination. But the world outside was restless. Travelers passing through reported whispers of a giant woman in the valley, wielding a strength no ordinary human could possess. Taza's enemies spread rumors, hoping to draw trouble. And trouble came in the form of bounty hunters, drawn by tales of her strength and the promise of reward. One evening, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, a group of 5 riders appeared on the ridge. Their horses stirred dust into the wind, their rifles glinting in the fading light. Nailish stood by the cabin, waiting, while Gideon loaded his rifle. The leader dismounted, a tall man with a scar running across his cheek. He smiled thinly. "We've heard tales of you, giantess. Strong, dangerous, cursed, they say. We're here to see if the stories are true." Nailish stepped forward, calm, her presence radiating strength. "Stories are meant to scare children, but I'm very real and very capable. Leave now, or test me, and you'll regret it." The man's eyes flicked to Gideon. "And this one," Gideon tightened his grip on the rifle. "He's my companion. Try either of us, and none of you leave alive." Tension stretched across the valley. Shadows deepened. The wind held its breath. Then, without warning, the man shouted, and the hunters charged. Nailish moved like a shadow, faster and stronger than any human. She disarmed 2 before they even fired. Gideon took precise shots, felling 2 more. Only the leader remained, circling cautiously. The fight ended swiftly, decisively. The hunters fled, leaving their weapons and pride behind. Nailish stood over the leader, her chest heaving, eyes blazing. "Tell your people," she said, voice cold. "The valley does not forgive intruders." Gideon joined her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "We survive," he said simply. "Yes," Nailish agreed. "But survival is not enough. We must thrive." The valley had tested them, physically, mentally, emotionally, and they had endured. Together, they were no longer just 2 survivors. They were a force the world could not easily ignore. If you're captivated by Nailish and Gideon's incredible journey of survival, strength, and courage, hit that like button, comment your favorite moment, and subscribe to join their story as it unfolds. Winter came early to the valley, draping the mountains in a harsh, unrelenting frost. The air was crisp and biting, carrying the scent of pine and smoke from distant settlements. Gideon and Nailish had spent months preparing for this season, reinforcing their cabin, stockpiling food, and mastering the valley's secret passages to avoid exposure. Despite their precautions, the first snowstorm brought a chilling realization. Nature, indifferent and unforgiving, could test even the strongest. The morning the storm began, Gideon woke to the sharp hiss of wind rattling the cabin walls. He shook Nailish gently. "It's here." The snow, heavier than I expected. Nailish stirred, her eyes opening slowly. The firelight danced across her determined face. "We can't stop it," she said simply, "but we can survive it." Bundled in thick layers of furs, they ventured outside to inspect their traps. The valley, blanketed in white, was nearly unrecognizable. Trees bowed under the weight of snow, and the creek had frozen over, leaving only jagged ice formations to mark its course. Every footstep was a struggle, each movement an exercise in endurance. "See those tracks?" Nailish pointed to a series of prints partially covered by fresh snow. "Something, or someone, passed her last night. Large, heavier than any human." Gideon knelt, examining the impressions. "Wolf? Or worse?" His voice carried unease. "It's too large for a normal wolf. Could it be the alpha we saw before?" Nailish frowned, scanning the horizon. "Maybe, but it moved fast. Careful, Gideon. The snow makes everything quieter. We won't hear it until it's close." The day was spent reinforcing the cabin further. Every log they added, every layer of insulation, was a shield against the relentless storm. Despite their preparation, fatigue began to set in, the cold seeping through even the thickest furs. At dusk, as the storm reached its peak, there came a knock, soft, deliberate, on the cabin door. Nailish froze, hand on her knife. "Who's there?" she demanded. A voice, trembling but familiar, responded. "It's me. Taryn. Please let me in." Gideon hesitated. "Taryn? From the northern pass? Are you alone?" "Yes. The snow had trapped me. I saw the ridge from afar. I followed. Please, I can't survive out there." Nailish studied him, her sharp eyes piercing through the frost-laden night. "One wrong step, and he could be leading danger straight to us," she whispered. Gideon finally spoke. "We can't leave him out, but we stay alert. No mistakes." The door opened, and Taryn stumbled inside, snow clinging to his clothes, lips blue from cold. Nailish guided him to the fire. "Drink this. Eat. Warm your hands. Then tell us everything." Taryn sipped hot broth, shivering violently. "It's worse than I thought," he began, voice trembling. "The mountain's alive. The snow isn't natural. The wind carries voices, warnings. And there's a beast, a shadow, massive, relentless. It's hunting the valley. Every traveler, every animal, it's drawn to them." Gideon frowned. "A shadow?" Taryn explained. "Are you talking about some creature or hallucinations from a storm?" Taryn shook his head. "No hallucinations. I saw it. Twice. One night, under the full moon, it rose from the ridge. Larger than any wolf, darker than the sky. Eyes glowing, and it moved with purpose. It's intelligent. It's hunting, and it will not stop." Nailish exchanged a glance with Gideon. "If he's telling the truth," she murmured, "we're in more danger than we thought. The storm, it isn't natural. Someone or something is guiding it." Night fell, and the cabin became a fortress. The storm roared outside, winds whipping against the walls, snow piling higher. The three sat in tense silence, only the crackle of the fire and the occasional groan of the cabin breaking the quiet. Hours passed, and then came a low, rumbling growl, deep, resonant, and terrifying. It vibrated through the walls. Nailish gripped her knife, eyes scanning the darkness outside. "It's here," she whispered. Gideon loaded his rifle, his hands steady despite the tension. "Stay calm. Do not panic. Wait for my signal." The growl grew louder, circling the cabin. Then, from the swirling snow, two glowing eyes appeared, massive, unblinking, fixed on the small cabin. The shadow loomed, muscles coiled beneath dark fur, teeth bared, claws digging into the snow. Nailish stepped forward, her figure a silhouette of defiance against the storm. "You will not enter," she shouted, voice carrying over the wind. "This valley is mine. We survive. You leave, or you die." The creature hesitated, ears twitching, assessing. Then it lunged. The fight was a blur of movement. Gideon fired precise shots, some deflected by the creature's thick hide. Nailish moved with the speed and grace of a predator, slashing at its legs, dodging claws, and countering its strikes. Taryn, though inexperienced, assisted with traps they had set earlier, causing the beast to stumble. Finally, after hours of relentless struggle, the shadow retreated, disappearing into the snowstorm. The cabin shook from the impact of the battle, walls splintered, windows cracked. Silence fell, broken only by their heavy breaths. Nailish leaned against the wall, knife dripping with blood, eyes wild. "It's not gone, it's learning. Every encounter teaches it." We need more than strength. We need strategy and allies. Gideon knelt beside her, examining the damage. The valley itself is our ally. Every ridge, every hidden path. We'll use it. We can survive this winter, but we must adapt. Taryn, still trembling, whispered, "There are others in other valleys like this waiting for it." Nailish's eyes hardened. Then we warn them, and we prepare. This is no longer just survival. It's war. The following days were a whirlwind of preparation. They set traps, reinforced the cabin, and mapped escape routes. Nailish trained Taryn, teaching him how to track, defend, and survive. Gideon studied the creature's patterns, noting every movement, every pause, every hunt. Together, they became a unit, a trio bound by necessity, courage, and unspoken trust. Weeks passed. The storm showed no mercy, yet they endured. Each day was a test of endurance, each night a battle against the unseen. The shadow returned, each time more cunning, more aggressive. Nailish and Gideon learned its patterns, anticipating attacks, setting traps, and surviving encounters that would have killed ordinary humans. One evening, after a particularly brutal encounter, Nailish sat outside, staring into the crimson sunset. "Do you ever wonder if we're too late?" she asked softly. Gideon joined her, handing a warm cup of tea. Too late for what? Too late to stop it, to save others, to protect the valley, she murmured, voice tinged with doubt. Gideon placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We're never too late. Every life we save, every trap we set, every plan we make, it matters. We endure. That's what counts. Survival isn't enough. You know that." Nailish nodded slowly, letting the warmth seep into her cold fingers. "I know, but sometimes it feels like the world wants us to fail. And yet," Gideon said softly, "we continue. Because we must. Because giving up is not an option." The storm raged on, but in the heart of the valley, a small fire burned, a symbol of hope, resilience, and defiance. Nailish, Gideon, and Taryn were no longer mere survivors. They were warriors, guardians of a valley besieged by darkness. Each day was a fight, each night a test, and with every challenge, their bond grew stronger. The shadow would return. They knew it, but so would they, stronger, wiser, united. The winter was harsh, but it could not break them. Not when they had each other, not when they had the will to survive, and not when they had the courage to fight for more than mere existence. If you're on the edge of your seat with Nailish, Gideon, and Taryn's incredible battle for survival, smash that like button, comment your favorite moment, and subscribe to witness the next chapter in their epic journey. The hidden path. The valley had grown colder with each passing day. The storm's fury had subsided temporarily, leaving behind a crystalline landscape of ice and snow. Gideon, Nailish, and Taryn had barely slept for weeks, their nights filled with the relentless growls of the shadow, and their days consumed by preparations and scouting. Every ridge, every hollow, every snow-laden tree had become both a battlefield and a guide, marking paths of survival that only they could navigate. Nailish stood at the cabin entrance, squinting against the pale light of a sun hidden behind thick clouds. "We can't wait any longer," she said, her voice sharp, tinged with resolve. "If the shadow is learning, we need to take the fight to it. Waiting is death." Gideon adjusted his rifle, his gaze sweeping the valley below. "The risk is high. One wrong step, and the snow becomes our grave." Taryn, still unsteady on his feet, but growing in confidence, tightened the straps on his pack. "I've been watching the creature's tracks. There's a pattern. It moves between the northern ridge and the hollow forest at night. We can intercept it if we follow carefully." Nailish's eyes softened for a moment as she looked at Taryn. "You've come far, boy. But remember, out there, mistakes are fatal." They packed provisions, dried meat, snowproof blankets, and supplies for a week. Each item had been carefully chosen, weighing survival against mobility. They left the cabin in silence, the crunch of snow underfoot echoing in the stillness. The air was sharp, cutting through layers of furs and determination alike. The journey to the northern ridge was treacherous. Hidden crevices and thin ice threatened to swallow them at every step. Nailish led the way, using her knowledge of the valley's secret paths. Gideon followed, rifle ready, scanning every shadow. Taryn brought up the rear, marking their trail and keeping watch for any sign of movement. As night fell, the temperature plunged further. Their breaths became visible, clouds of white against the inky darkness. Suddenly, Terran froze. "Listen," he whispered. A faint rustle came from the hollow forest below, a sound so subtle it could have been dismissed as the wind. But Nalish's eyes narrowed. "Not the wind," she said, drawing her knife. "Something is moving." They crouched behind a snowbank, straining to see. Two glowing eyes appeared, low and deliberate. The shadow had returned. It moved differently now, slower, more calculated. It was hunting, but with intelligence, an almost human cunning that sent shivers down their spines. Gideon signaled to advance carefully. They descended the slope, keeping to shadows and natural cover. Nalish whispered instructions, guiding them along a hidden path beneath the ice-laden trees. The valley seemed alive, creaking and groaning under the weight of snow, as if aware of the trespassers. Hours passed as they trailed the creature, following its footprints, careful to leave none of their own. They entered a narrow gorge where the walls of ice glimmered with an otherworldly light. Here, the shadow had hunted before. Remnants of its prey littered the snow, bones gnawed clean, fur scattered, and blood frozen into crystalline patterns. Nalish knelt beside one of the remains. "It's territorial. It marks its hunting grounds, and it's getting bolder." Gideon studied the gorge. "We can use that. It expects fear. If we move with purpose, we can set a trap it won't anticipate." Terran shivered but nodded. "I can help. We set the decoys and bait. Then we wait." They spent hours crafting the trap. Deep pits covered with snow, sharpened stakes hidden beneath, and sent trails to lure the shadow into position. Every detail was precise, calculated to give them the upper hand against a creature that had already survived countless encounters. Night deepened, and the valley became a silent, frozen abyss. The wind carried a whisper of voices, faint echoes that seemed almost human. Terran's eyes widened. "It's here. I can feel it." From the darkness, the shadow emerged, moving cautiously, aware of the unseen danger. Its eyes glowed with intelligence, scanning the gorge, analyzing, calculating. Nalish and Gideon held their breaths, hearts pounding, waiting for the right moment. Suddenly, the shadow lunged toward a false trail they had laid, triggering a pitfall. It howled, a sound that resonated through the mountains, shaking the ice walls. It struggled, thrashing, but the trap held. Nalish and Gideon moved in, striking with precision, aiming to wound and contain rather than kill outright. The creature was relentless. It adapted to every attack, dodged every strike with an uncanny speed, and countered with terrifying power. Blood and snow mixed, staining the pristine gorge. Terran, working with Nalish, managed to trigger another trap, causing the shadow to falter. Hours of grueling combat passed. The valley echoed with the roars and growls of the shadow, the clash of weapons, and the relentless crackle of ice under stress. At last, Gideon's rifle found its mark, wounding the creature just enough to slow it. Nalish delivered a calculated strike, forcing it to retreat into the darkness. They collapsed, exhausted, hearts racing, hands trembling. Terran looked at the creature's tracks disappearing into the night. "Will it come back?" Nalish, panting, wiped blood from her face. "It always does. But now we know it can be hurt. And we are learning too. This winter isn't just about surviving the storm. It's about mastering the valley and mastering it ourselves." Gideon helped Terran to his feet. "The hidden path is more than a route. It's a lesson. Every trap, every encounter teaches us. We become smarter, faster, stronger. The shadow may be powerful, but so are we when we work together." The frostbitten dawn brought a sense of eerie calm. Snow fell softly, masking the destruction of the night. Nalish, Gideon, and Terran returned to their cabin, their bodies aching, their spirits weary, but their resolve stronger than ever. They knew the shadow would return, that winter still held countless perils, but they had discovered a truth. Unity, strategy, and courage could turn even the deadliest winter into a battlefield they could survive. In the days that followed, they honed their skills, mapped every hidden path, and set traps throughout the valley. Word of the shadow's existence spread to other settlements, and Nalish sent warnings to those brave enough to listen. The valley became a network of prepared warriors, each ready to defend their homes against the dark intelligence that roamed the snow. Every encounter with the shadow brought new lessons. It was fast, intelligent, and adaptive, but human ingenuity, courage, and unity proved formidable. Nalish's leadership, Gideon's precision and Terran's growing skill combined into a force that could rival even the most relentless predator. One night, as they sat by the fire, Nailish spoke quietly. "This is only the beginning. The valley has many secrets. The shadow, it is just one of them. We have to be ready for what comes next." Gideon nodded. "We'll face it together. Every hidden path, every dark corner of this valley, we'll claim it before it claims us." Terran looked into the flames, determination hardening his features. "I'll follow you, no matter where it leads." Nailish smiled faintly. "And that is why we survive. Not because we are stronger than the storm, but because we refuse to face it alone." The snow continued to fall, soft and silent, covering the valley in a blanket of white. But within that frozen landscape, a fire burned brighter than any storm could quench. It was the fire of resilience, of courage, of unity, a beacon for all who dared to challenge the darkness. The shadow had been wounded. The hidden paths had been mapped. The valley had been defended. But the war was far from over. And Nailish, Gideon, and Terran knew that to survive, to truly master this winter, they would need every ounce of skill, every drop of courage, and every bond they had forged in the frozen heart of the valley. The morning sun barely penetrated the thick blanket of clouds over the valley. Snow fell in silent sheets, muffling sound and movement, and casting the world in a uniform white glow. Gideon, Nailish, and Terran stood at the edge of the northern ridge, surveying the valley below. It was deceptively quiet, but each of them knew that beneath this serene layer of snow, danger lurked. The shadow was wounded but not defeated. "Every footstep counts today," Nailish said, her voice low and deliberate. "The shadow has learned from our traps. It's cautious, it's clever, and it's fast." Gideon adjusted his rifle, scanning the ridges. "Then we need to be faster, smarter. Every trap we laid last week, it won't fall for the same ones again." Terran, shivering from the cold but resolute, checked the pack he carried. "I've been studying its movements. It avoids open areas now and hunts along ridges. If we predict its path, we can force it into the gorge again." Nailish nodded. "Good. But this time, we need more than traps. We need strategy, patience, and a willingness to fight without fear." The valley was a maze of snowdrifts, frozen rivers, and ice-covered cliffs. Each step they took was calculated, measured, testing both endurance and courage. Nailish led the way, her instincts honed from years of surviving winter's fury. She knew which areas were weak under the snow, which ice sheets could hold a human weight, and which crevices would conceal the sharpest teeth of danger. As they descended into the gorge, Terran paused, pointing to a faint trail in the snow. "Fresh, very fresh. It came this way less than an hour ago." Gideon's eyes narrowed. "Then it hasn't lost any strength. We have to be ready for anything." They moved silently, like shadows themselves, avoiding any sudden movement that might reveal their presence. The gorge was narrower than before, the walls glistening with ice that reflected their torches in fractured patterns. Every sound, a snap of ice, a distant howl, the crunch of snow underfoot, echoed ominously. Hours passed. The shadow was elusive, teasing them, never fully committing. It was as if it were testing them, probing for weaknesses, studying their behavior with a calculated intelligence that made Terran's stomach twist in nervous anticipation. Suddenly, a low growl rumbled through the gorge. The shadow had appeared, but it was different this time. Larger, more imposing, its fur bristling, eyes glowing like molten gold. It moved with purpose, circling, assessing, waiting. Nailish whispered, "Stay calm. Wait for the moment to strike. Don't rush it." The creature lunged without warning. Gideon fired, bullets striking ice and snow, shattering small chunks into the air. The shadow dodged, moving with preternatural speed, and retaliated, swiping with claws that could tear through armor. Terran barely dodged, tumbling into a snowbank, breath leaving him in clouds of white. Nailish moved like a phantom, her knife slicing through the air, finding purchase in the creature's flank. It howled, a sound that resonated through the valley, shaking the ice walls. The shadow was wounded, but far from defeated. It retreated briefly, only to strike again with renewed fury. The battle became a deadly dance. Each movement, each strike, each dodge mattered. Terran set traps in the shadows, triggering hidden pits and snare lines. Gideon fired with precision, aiming not just to harm, but to guide the shadow toward their planned path. Nailish struck with agility and strength, her knife an extension of her will, every cut and parry deliberate. Time lost all meaning. Hours merged into an endless struggle against the winter and the creature. The snow beneath their feet was churned into a mixture of ice, blood, and shattered frost. The gorge echoed with the clash of claws and steel, the roar of the shadow, and the labored breathing of three determined warriors. At one point, the shadow lunged directly at Terran, pinning him against the icy wall. Naelish threw herself in front, driving her knife into the creature's shoulder. Gideon fired his rifle at close range, hitting the creature with a precision shot that staggered it. Together, they forced it to retreat further into the gorge. Naelish's voice was steady but firm. "We need to end this now. If it escapes, it will only grow stronger. We need to use the gorge to our advantage. Its narrow path, the ice walls, trap it permanently." Gideon nodded. "I've marked a weak ice shelf ahead. If we can force it onto it, the weight of the creature and the snow will collapse the shelf into the river below." Terran's hands trembled, but he understood. "Then let's make it count. No mistakes." They moved with precision, baiting the shadow along the gorge. It followed, relentless, sensing their plan, but its wounded state made it slower, more predictable. Naelish led the final approach, her voice a whisper, guiding Gideon and Terran through the icy labyrinth. Then, the moment came. The shadow charged, faster than ever, and Gideon fired at the ice shelf. Naelish struck at the creature's flank simultaneously, driving it onto the weakened ice. With a deafening crack, the shelf gave way. The shadow plunged into the frozen river below, splashing water and ice in every direction. It struggled, fighting against the current, but the river's depth and cold immobilized it. They watched, hearts pounding, as the shadow disappeared beneath the ice. Silence fell over the gorge. The storm had passed, leaving a world transformed. The valley's frozen beauty now a testament to their survival and skill. Terran exhaled, voice trembling. Is it over?" Naelish looked down at the icy river, then back at her companions. "For now, but the valley will always hold dangers. This is only one trial of many. We have survived, yes, but survival is just the beginning." Gideon lowered his rifle, exhaustion written across his face. "We've learned, adapted, and fought together. That is what matters. The shadow may have been formidable, but together, we are stronger than any predator, any storm." They spent the night in the gorge, tending wounds, warming their frozen bodies by a makeshift fire. Stories were shared in whispers, memories of past winters, the people they had lost, the courage that had driven them to this moment. They were united not just by survival, but by trust, resilience, and an unspoken bond forged in the crucible of battle. The dawn of the next day brought clarity and determination. Naelish, Gideon, and Terran returned to the northern ridge, surveying the valley that had been both their prison and proving ground. The shadow's defeat, even temporary, was symbolic, a victory not just over a creature, but over fear, uncertainty, and the unforgiving winter itself. As they prepared to descend back to their cabin, Naelish spoke quietly. "The winter has tested us, pushed us to our limits, but it has also shown us what we are capable of. Strength is not just muscle or weapon. It is courage, strategy, and the bonds we share." Gideon nodded, eyes scanning the horizon. "And the shadow, it will return one day. But we'll be ready. Every hidden path, every trap, every lesson, they are ours now." Terran, looking at the snowy valley below, felt a surge of pride and determination. "I'm ready for whatever comes next. No matter how harsh, no matter how dark." Naelish smiled faintly, her breath forming clouds in the crisp air. "That is why we survive. Not because winter is forgiving or because the valley is kind, but because we refuse to face it alone. And together, we are unstoppable." The valley lay quiet beneath the soft falling snow, but within its frozen heart, a fire burned brighter than any storm could quench. The winter had tested them, the shadow had challenged them, but Naelish, Gideon, and Terran had emerged stronger, united, and unbroken. They returned to their cabin, exhausted but victorious. Their bond had been forged in ice and battle, and their mastery over the valley had only begun. Winter's trial was over, but the journey and the story of courage, strategy, and survival had only just begun. The first light of dawn broke over the horizon, spilling pale gold across the snow-laden valley. For the first time in weeks, the air seemed calm, almost serene. Yet the silence carried the weight of anticipation, as if the very earth waited for the next act of fate. Nailish, Gideon, and Terran stood at the ridge overlooking the valley, their eyes tracing paths etched by snow and struggle, marks of battles fought and survived. The shadow had disappeared, but its presence lingered, in broken ice, in disturbed snow, in the echoes of their exhausted breaths. Nailish adjusted her cloak against the chill, eyes scanning the horizon. We faced winter, the shadow, and countless dangers. But now, we must face what the valley itself has concealed all along. Gideon frowned. What do you mean? The shadow is gone. The storms are passing. Isn't that enough? Nailish shook her head slowly. No, the valley is alive. It reacts. It remembers. The shadow was just the beginning. We've seen the surface, but beneath it, secrets wait. Ancient, powerful, and not always forgiving. Terran's brow furrowed. Secrets? Like what? Nailish's eyes gleamed, reflecting the early sunlight. Caves that breathe, rivers that shift, and creatures that think like we do, and worse. The valley tests all who enter it. We have survived its trials, but the final test is yet to come. They descended into the valley cautiously, the crunch of snow underfoot the only sound. As they moved, strange shapes emerged from the mist. Jagged rocks carved unnaturally, frozen trees twisted like skeletal hands, and shadows that seemed to flicker independently from their sources. Every step felt heavier, as if the valley itself resisted their presence. Hours passed in tense silence. The trio navigated icy rivers, scaling cliffs, and crossing treacherous bridges of ice. Each obstacle demanded every ounce of their skill and courage. They were no longer merely hunters or survivors. They had become instruments of will against a living, breathing world of danger. Finally, they reached the heart of the valley, a vast amphitheater of ice and stone, with walls rising hundreds of feet, encircling a frozen lake that reflected the morning sun like molten gold. The air hummed with energy, a palpable vibration that made their teeth chatter. Nailish's voice broke the silence. This is it, the center of the valley's power. Whatever we face now will define us. The ice shifted beneath their feet as a deep rumble echoed across the amphitheater. From a frozen lake rose shapes, enormous, crystalline forms that refracted light in dazzling patterns. They were creatures unlike any the trio had seen, with translucent bodies that shimmered with inner fire. Their movements were fluid, almost graceful, yet filled with predatory intent. Gideon gripped his rifle tightly. These aren't shadows. There's something else entirely. Nailish nodded, drawing her knives. They're guardians, the valley's last defense. If we want to leave, we must pass them. The first creature lunged, moving with a speed that seemed impossible given its size. Nailish met it head-on, her blades cutting through ice and crystal with a precision born of necessity. Terran and Gideon flanked her, firing and striking, creating openings, exploiting weaknesses. The battle was immediate, intense, and unlike anything they had faced. The crystalline guardians adapted quickly. Each strike against them healed faster than expected, and every movement seemed preempted by an instinctual intelligence. Nailish realized that brute force would not win this fight. They needed strategy, patience, and unity. Focus on patterns. Nailish shouted. Predict their rhythm. Don't just attack. Gideon's eyes darted across the creatures, noting how they moved. They respond to aggression. If we bait them carefully, we can force them into traps, just like the shadow. Terran, inspired, triggered hidden spikes he had set along the ice. One guardian fell, cracking the frozen surface beneath it, sending shards of ice into the air. Another creature approached Gideon, who feigned weakness, drawing it toward a fissure. With a well-timed shot, the ice gave way, swallowing the guardian below. Hours blurred into an endless struggle. The valley seemed alive, constantly shifting, reacting, challenging their every move. Yet slowly, deliberately, they learned. Every strike, every dodge, every plan was refined. The trio moved as one, anticipating each other's actions, their bond stronger than any adversary. As the final guardian fell into the deep crevice, silence engulfed the amphitheater. The valley seemed to exhale a low, resonant sound that echoed through the ice walls. For the first time, peace settled over the frozen expanse, though it was fragile, delicate, and fleeting. Nailish knelt beside the lake, her reflection shimmering alongside the broken crystal forms. We've passed the final trial. The valley acknowledges us. We're no longer intruders. We are survivors, masters of our fate here. Gideon joined her, placing a hand on her shoulder. We've grown stronger, not just in body, but in spirit. Nothing, nothing can break the bond we share. Taryn smiled, exhaustion and relief blending. The valley tested us, the shadow tested us, and the guardians tested us. But together, we proved ourselves. The sun climbed higher, melting the frost in delicate streams, revealing the valley's hidden beauty. Colors unseen, life thriving in unexpected corners, and a world waiting to be explored, understood, and respected. The valley was no longer a threat. It was a realm of discovery, a testament to courage, strategy, and unbreakable bonds. As they began their descent back to their cabin, Nailish spoke softly, her eyes on the horizon. This journey ends here, but the story is eternal. We carry the valley's trials with us, not as scars, but as wisdom, courage, and unity. Whatever challenges come next, we face them as one. Gideon and Taryn nodded, their hearts swelling with purpose and pride. The dawn of the valley was not just a moment of victory. It was the beginning of a legacy, a promise that no storm, shadow, or guardian could undo. They had faced the impossible, endured the harshest trials, and emerged not just alive, but transformed. The valley lay behind them, quiet, vast, and magnificent. Ahead lay endless possibilities, paths uncharted, mysteries untold, and adventures yet to unfold. And together, Nailish, Gideon, and Taryn would meet them all, fearless, united, and unstoppable. The ultimate trial is complete. Watch Nailish, Gideon, and Taryn conquer the valley's greatest dangers. Like, comment which trial shocked you the most, and subscribe to witness the legacy of courage, unity, and survival. The Sisters' Secret. Hours crawled by. The storm outside had no mercy, lashing against the cabin with endless fury. Inside, the rancher was sinking deeper into his drink. His eyes were half-lidded, his speech slurred, his boots stretched lazily toward the fire. But the sisters were not resting. They sat close together, heads bent, their whispers blending with the crackle of burning wood. To the rancher, it might have seemed like nothing more than nervous chatter. But in truth, it was strategy, sharp, deliberate, born of survival. The elder spoke low in their native tongue. He thinks we are cornered. He thinks the storm has broken us. But he does not know our blood. The younger swallowed hard, her voice shaking. If we fail, sister, we will not fail. The elder cut her off, her eyes flashing in the firelight. He grows weaker with every drink. The moment he stumbles, the moment he reaches for us, that is when we strike. The younger's gaze drifted toward the table, where a knife lay half-hidden beneath scraps of bread and an empty tin plate. Her fingers flexed nervously, as if already feeling its weight. The elder placed a firm hand on her sister's knee. Courage. Our people did not teach us to bow. We endure, but only until the right moment comes. The rancher raised his glass, oblivious, humming an old tune, proud in his ignorance. He believed himself a wolf, but two hunters sat across from him, cloaked in silence. Loudspeaker's second call to action, Bart. Narrator voice, suspenseful pause in story. What would you do in their place? Would you run into the storm or stay and fight? Backhand index pointing right. Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear how you see this moment.